Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to the GSL-English Podcast. My name is Gideon, and this is a podcast for all learners of English to practice and improve in a relaxed and natural way so that you can, speak English in the most authentic and the most real way possible. And in today's episode, we are going to be talking about screen time. Okay, we're going to be talking about the amount of time that we spend on a screen. So before we get into it, I just want you to think, how much time, honestly, would you say on average you spend on a screen a day? Now, I know that there's many factors that probably would change that answer. It's depending whether your work is based on a screen, what you do in your spare time. But just try and think to yourself, how much time do you spend on a screen a day? And then I want you to think, how much time do you spend using a screen in any form? So computer, TV, smartphone, tablet. How much time do you spend on those things because you have to, because you have no choice? And how much time do you spend on those things voluntarily, meaning that you're not forced to, you're doing it through your own choice? Now, just have a little think about that, because if you can kind of understand your connection, your relationship with screens, you'll get more from this podcast. So as we go through, we're going to talk about why perhaps too much screen time is not good for us. I'm going to talk about that. And then the key point of this episode is it possible? Is it possible in this day and age to learn and improve our English away from screens? Not completely. I must put that in there, because if you go away from the screens completely, you will no longer enjoy this podcast on YouTube, and I'm done for. I'm gone. So I'm not saying to remove screens completely from your life, because that would not help me at all. And there are fantastic ways of learning English through YouTube, the GSL-English Podcast, of course. You've got different apps, Duolingo. They're all brilliant. But is it too much? I think it is. So can we improve our English away from screens? Can we go back to basics, back to fundamentals? Do they still work when learning and improving our English? So that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, if you are new here, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. If you're watching, give you a wave. Hello. And if you are listening on Spotify, please give this a like, subscribe, follow, do whatever you need to do. Introduce yourself in the comments. Because I post these every week, every Sunday. And also trying at the moment to post lessons on Wednesday. So make sure you look out for them. But why are we talking about screen time? Well, as many of you know, if you are loyal listeners, there's very often a story or an anecdote that gives a reason as to why we're talking about this. And this is no different. There's a story coming your way. And as usual, it involves my wife. So here we go. It's story time. If you are interested in the story, keep watching, keep listening. But if you're not interested in the story, skip forward and you can just get to the main point rather than listening to me babble on. Really, I like to do that. I babble on a lot. I go on about nothing, but maybe that's your thing. Maybe you like it. If not, I give you permission. Skip forward. It's okay. But yeah, welcome to story time. So my wife and I the other night were having not a date night, because every night's a date night, I guess, when you live together, isn't it? Hey. But my wife was cooking dinner, and she cooked a splendid meal, I must say. Not that my wife listens to this, but if she does for any reason, well done. Thank you. It was a very good meal. I did enjoy it. It was like a chicken with a balsamic glaze and rice. Then we had a lovely dessert. It was fantastic. And then after that meal, we were sitting down at the dining table, having a little glass of wine together. And usually, at that point, we go over to the living room to watch a film or something, put a TV series on, which I absolutely love. We love doing that. We all do, right? Chucking a film on a Friday night and just unwinding. It's lovely, isn't it? Especially after a long week. But my wife said, "Hey, do you want to play a board game?" And I thought, yes, Yes, I do want to play a board game. So we played the classic game Battleships. Now, this is a game that has run through our marriage. During COVID, we bought a load of board games, one of which being Battleships, and we played it relentlessly. As like most things in our marriage, the first few games, the first few days of playing, I was on fire. You know, you could not beat me. And then suddenly my wife wakes up one day being a Battleships pro and just absolutely wipes the floor with me every time, which was no different on Friday evening. She did exactly the same. I think we played 4 games. She won all of them. But that's not the point. That's not the point. We can talk about that another time. We can talk about how the loss makes me feel another time. But it was really nice. And we try and do things away from the screen as much as possible. But I think like everybody, you just get in the habit, don't you? After dinner, you put the film on. Or perhaps you put a TV on, or you put a film on. And perhaps whilst you're watching TV, you're eating your dinner. Nothing wrong with that, but it's become too much a part of all of our routine. Maybe I'm speaking for us all there, but particularly for me, it's become too much a part of our routine. And having that break from the screens on Friday evening, it really got me thinking about screen time and how much time I do actually spend on a screen. And I know that it is far too much. Some of it because I'm forced to, well, not forced, but because it's my job. I teach English, I create these podcasts, you know, I have to be on a screen. I got no choice. But in the evenings, I do have a choice. And my choice is very often just to doom scroll on Instagram, to put YouTube on and things like that. I just thought I've had enough of that. So this year, I'm trying to stay away from screen time. So I was doing some research and I found just some articles talking about the damage of excessive screen time. And I just want to read this to you, just to put it in perspective as to why we're talking about this. So it's just a short couple of paragraphs, but it was very well written as to why too much screen time is bad for us. Okay, so it starts off with the term binge watching television. Binge watching is when you just go from one episode to another, to another, to another, to another. You're binging that. You know, you can't just watch one, you just keep on going and going and going. So it said, binge watching television, watching YouTube videos for hours, or scrolling on your phone every morning may seem harmless. But research shows that too much screen time may be detrimental to your health. And when we talk about something being detrimental, it is bad. You know, it's going to have a negative impact, not a good effect on your health. We know children's brains are affected by spending too much time glued to their cell phones. If you're glued to something, you're stuck to it. However, research shows that adult brains are also negatively impacted by excessive screen time. So by excessive, meaning more than we need. And that is defined as more than 2 hours a day outside of work hours. So according to this study, excessive screen time would fall into the bracket of more than 2 hours a day outside of work. Too much screen time can impact our health in a myriad of ways. Great word, myriad, in a multitude of ways, many different ways. From eye strain and neck pain to social isolation and mental health, and in some cases, it may cause harm to our brains. There are a lot of implications, negative implications, detrimental implications to too much screen time. It's true, isn't it? It strains or puts stress on our eyes. I know since COVID, which was when I really started working online, my eyesight has suffered because I'm staring at a screen so much. You have muscular and skeletal problems because you're literally, you're hunched over. You're not really. Throughout the day, my shoulders are rolled forward. If you work in an office or at a desk, you'll have the same thing. On Instagram, we have social isolation. And this is so true Instagram, sorry. I threw in Instagram there, but social media in general, it creates social isolation, doesn't it? Even when we're out and about. Let's imagine we are waiting for a bus, waiting at the coffee shop. What do we do generally, and what does everyone else do? Get out our phone, scroll on whatever we want to. There's a lack of social interaction there. Or perhaps sometimes, let's be honest, we're with our friends, we're with our family. What can we do? We get out the phones. And that's sad, isn't it? When we do that, I guess in essence we're saying that the phone is more important or more interesting than the people that we're with. We're creating that social isolation, which leads on to mental health problems and, can cause harm to our brains. To elaborate on that, it says, since the eyes are directly connected to the brain, Loeffler, I think that's how you say it, who wrote this article, encourages us to think about our eye health to ensure overall brain health. Rather than looking at our phones upon waking, Loeffler recommends starting each morning looking at the horizon or an object outside and far away. I thought that was really interesting. Never done it in my life, but I'm going to give it a go. Rather than the first thing we do, staring at our phone, look out your window and look at an object far away. And apparently that is actually really good for our eye health. Of course, it depends where we live. If you live in an apartment building where you've got your window that goes onto another person's window, probably not the best idea just to wake up and stare out of your window into their window. But if you have got the ability to do so, stare down your garden or something like that, whatever it is. But basically, when we wake up in the morning, what's the first thing we do? Go on our phone. To prevent eye strain throughout the workday, the American Academy of I practiced this. I practiced it beforehand. And now ophthalmology, I'll go with that, recommends the 20-20-20 rule for adults who work on a computer. This rule suggests that individuals look at something 20 feet away for 20 seconds every 20 minutes of the day. That's never going to happen with me because I lose track of time and life just doesn't go in that kind of way. But it's the principle that we want to take from it, isn't it? That we need physically and mentally to have a break from the screens. Have a break from screens. We've got to do it throughout the day. I think sometimes you might be the same if you work in an office, but I look at a screen for hours on end. Hours, particularly when I'm editing these podcasts, and I like to try and level the audio. I'm a fancy guy. You've got to get this right. So I try and level the audio just so it's not up and down for you all the time. But I'm like squinting at the screen, staring at it for hours on end trying to do that. That's not good for you. And I do it without a break. And maybe you can think to yourself, yeah, I do the same. So every now and then, maybe set a little note on your phone that says, look away, get away from the screen. Do it. So yeah, too much screen time, excessive screen time as it put it, maybe we need to cut down on that. And how can that apply to learning English? Well, what we're going to do first is I looked up some suggestions on how to reduce screen time. Okay, now these aren't really to do with English, but I thought I would share them with you. They might help. Okay? The first is to turn off notifications on your phone. Agreed? Sometimes this is not possible. You need notifications on, whether it's work or family. But is there a period of time where you could turn off notifications on your phone? When perhaps you don't need to be distracted? Or I was thinking, rather than turning off notifications completely, maybe what I'm going to try is turning off notifications for apps that I don't need to be notified. I don't need to be notified when a friend that I never talked to from years ago posts something on Instagram or posts a story for the first time in 6 months. Don't need that notification. Or if you post something, do you need all the notifications of likes? Because all that makes us do is pick up our phone and then what do? We start scrolling and we're back in the cycle. Or perhaps can we have a period of time when we're away from work, if we're fortunate enough to do so, where we can turn off notifications for emails? It's just that idea, if we can turn off notifications completely, brilliant. But maybe there are certain apps where we can just, disable notifications for that. Perhaps TikTok or Instagram, YouTube, whatever it is. Apart from the GSL-English Podcast, I always want to get notifications for that. Okay. The other one is set a timer. This is a good suggestion. In the evenings, outside of work, can you set a timer and stick to it? So maybe you set a timer of 1 hour, 2 hours of screen time, and that's it. Now, this next one that it threw out is a difficult one. Leave your phone out of the bedroom. And I was actually reading a book on reading an article on an extremely successful man, and he says what he does. So he says is he leaves his phone downstairs and just has an alarm clock in his room, because once he's upstairs and in bed, he doesn't need his phone. Now, I don't think that would necessarily work for a lot of people, because people are in different situations in life and you need to have your phone near you, perhaps for emergencies or family reasons, whatever it is. But is that an option, that the phone just doesn't come in the bedroom? Do we need it in there? Would that give us a break from screen times? It's the principles, that we want to take from this. Take regular breaks from screens whenever you can. So maybe that's, again, setting a reminder on your phone. Use blue light filters. Get special glasses or something that goes on your screen so it's not as much of a strain on your eyes. Now, this last one was absolutely brilliant. I like this. Create a bedtime routine that promotes relaxation. Does your phone relax you? Does Instagram relax you? Does screen time generally relax us? Well, the answer is very often no, because although, as it's said in that article, it might seem harmless, doing some research into it, and it is having an effect. It is engaging our brain. It is stimulating our brain, which really is not promoting relaxation. So there's just some ideas, perhaps we can apply one or two of them just to reduce the amount of time that we spend on a screen. And maybe you've got some other suggestions, please share them in the comments. If you've got some other ways, or perhaps tell us your story about, screen time, and maybe you've been able to limit your screen time or to reduce it. Yeah, share your story. I would love to know, and perhaps we can encourage each other. But now let's apply this to English, okay? I'm going to share with you some ways that you can practice, you can learn, you can improve your English without a screen. Now, as a caveat, as a disclaimer, I am not saying that you should not learn English through screens. It's all about balance. But I do believe that all of your learning of English should not be on a screen. It's not good for you. It's not healthy. And I think actually mixing it up with learning with the screens and away from screens actually is a great way of improving faster, because we're switching things up, and that always helps. So I'm just going to share with you just some suggestions that I would put into practice away from screens to learn English. Okay, the first one is self-talk, okay, and think in English. Narrate what you are doing in English out loud. Now, a lot of people seem against this, but it is a brilliant way to start the process of thinking in English. Give it a try. So, for example, when you wake up in the morning, I know it might sound weird, but narrate what you are doing in English. For example, I'm putting the kettle on. I'm going to make a cup of coffee. Now I'm putting the bread in the toaster. Things like that. I know it sounds weird, but by doing that, you are starting the process. One, you're starting the day of speaking in English. You're getting used to speaking in English, which is brilliant. As you do that, you might realise that, what's the word? Toaster. Okay, do you know what I mean? You're starting that process. And then in turn, when you narrate your activities in English, that starts the process of thinking in English, which is forming thoughts in English rather than your native language. And that really is the kicker to fluency. That really is the fast track to improvement when you start to think in English. And I've had so many students that have just said, Gideon, I think I've started thinking in English. And it's because many of the times I say to them, start off by narrating your day out loud. Of course, if you're on the underground or you're at work, you don't want to be sit there going, now I am sitting down on the seat. I'm opening my newspaper. Now I'm sitting down at my desk and I'm going to eat my apple. I don't want you losing your job for being weird. So pick your moments. But if it is possible, just do it. Give it a try. Honestly, it really works. And then start the process of thinking in English, thinking about what you want to say, what you're talking about in English. So that's the first one. Self-talk, you narrate your day out loud, and then make an active effort to think in English. It involves no screen time. Yeah, just simple way of doing it. Okay, the next one I've started doing this recently. Read physical books and magazines. Get away from the Kindle. Get away from the laptop, the tablet, the phone. Read an actual book. Firstly, for me, one of the biggest reasons to read an actual book is because of the smell. Am I on my own? I love the smell of a new book. We went on holiday recently. Best part of the holiday, opening up that fresh book. Oh, it was great. But physical books, there's a connection with them that you don't have with any kind of electronic device. You might disagree with me, but I disagree with you if you disagree with me, because I think, that connection that you have with reading a physical book, buying a magazine and reading it, it is just such a pure experience. And you have this, I don't know about you, but when you read a word on paper, it just sticks with you more than it does from a screen. And one of the great things, you might be against this, but when you read a physical book, you can make notes with a pen. And it's just that whole process, that physical process of reading a physical book. And if you'd like to make notes, you can. It's all such a great way of activating those memory aids that we have away from a screen. And with those physical books, if you can at all, read aloud. Why not set 15 minutes a day where you are in a place where there are no screens, or there are no screens active or on, and you just read a book aloud. Brilliant, because you're practicing speaking out loud. You are reading vocabulary out loud. And for that 15 minutes or half an hour, you're much more likely to remember what you were reading. That's another just idea. Get a physical book rather than magazines. It's just a nice way of getting away from the screen. It's such a visceral and just pure experience. One thing, it's not my cup of tea, but a lot of people like to do it, is to keep a diary. Write down your day, your thoughts, your opinions in English. Challenge yourself to express yourself in ways that you normally wouldn't. Use idioms, phrasal verbs, new vocabulary. Or what some people do is if they watch a film, afterwards they will write their opinion and their thoughts on the film. I know I've got one student that does that. And I mean, I've got so much respect for them, but I can't do that myself. But, watch a film and then write down physically in a note with a notepad and pen what you thought of the film. What's your opinion? What was the story? What did you learn? It's just all of that way. You're practicing your writing skills now. You're practicing forming sentence and using new vocabulary. The next one, I think many of us do this, but listen to English around you. Use radio stations. Use audiobooks. Of course, with this podcast and many other fantastic podcasts, you can also listen on Spotify. Listen to song lyrics. Try to understand them. If you hear conversations in real life without being nosy, just have a little listen. Listen to what people are talking about, if you're able to. Of course, that's only if you're in an English-speaking country or around English-speaking people. But listen to English away from watching something. So that doesn't include watching films, watching me on YouTube, whatever it is, watching any of the other English learning channels, which are brilliant. Listen. Without your eyes, just your ears, just listen. Brilliant way of improving your English. Another one, language games. We don't do these enough anymore. When I first started teaching, everything was about language games, but then they just kind of died out and everything got a little bit serious. Language games are brilliant. Word association games with a friend. Think of words related or countries. Words related to travel and go through the alphabet. If you're driving in the car with a friend who either speaks English or is learning English, play some word association games with them. I Spy. Words to do with the internet from A to Z. A to Z. Oh my goodness, I sounded American then. From A to Z. If you're at home with your friend, try Scrabble. Get some English crossword puzzles. Do some word search books, but just get the physical books and do them. There's nothing wrong with language games, and I think at the moment we're in a bit of a rut with that, but they are a brilliant way of improving your English. Not everything has to be so serious. Not everything has to be so official. Just enjoy it. Now, the next one is one that I swear by, and I actually meant to start with this one, but I got carried away, and that is to label your surroundings. Particularly if you are in a intermediate or beginner stage of English, or perhaps you're advanced but you just struggle with that basic vocabulary. There's so many learners of English like that. So you're not on your own, but you're advanced. You can hold a conversation, but my goodness, can you think what a tea kettle is, when you need to, or a coaster or an iron? It's amazing actually how advanced learners of English just sometimes forget the vocabulary for everyday items. Grab some sticky notes, write it down and stick them around your house. You don't have to do this all the time or have them up all year round. Oh, this works so much. I did it with Spanish. I haven't practiced or stuck with it, as many of you know, so I've forgotten a lot of it. But it really helps at the time. Fridge, kettle, cupboard, even in your home, skirting boards, door handle, whatever it is, whatever you struggle with, label your surroundings. Or when you are out and about, if you're on the underground to work, or you're walking around the city getting to work, look at objects and name them in English. For example, bench, blade of grass, water. Oh, that was a rubbish one. We should know what water is. Or a fountain. But label your surroundings either physically or mentally. It takes no screen time. And you might realise there's an area where you need to improve your vocabulary. Well, that is where you can later bring the screen in. Now, another area that I wanted to present to you is shadowing from the radio, audiobooks, or songs or podcasts. Now, I posted a lesson on Wednesday on YouTube, which was like a shadowing speak with me lesson. Absolutely brilliant. Well, not saying my lesson is, that activity is absolutely brilliant. There's plenty of other brilliant ones on YouTube, so definitely do that. But also, if you've got the opportunity, put on an English podcast, put on the English radio, read along with an audiobook, and just repeat what they say. Repeat sentences, repeat words, repeat different nuances in their accent and pronunciation. And just get in the habit of doing it. It doesn't have to be a regimented exercise, but just give it a try. If they say a word, mimic it. Give it a try. Try different tones, different pronunciation, and just get in the habit of doing that. So it's not necessarily officially sitting down and going through a shadowing exercise, but just get into the habit of passive shadowing at any time you can. So they're the options that I wanted to share with you. Please give them a try. Narrate your day, think in English. Keep a diary. Listen to English around you. Play more games based around English. Label your surroundings physically and mentally, and shadow on a daily basis away from the screen. Give these a try, as well as whatever you do to learn English on a screen time or what apps you use. But in everything in life at the moment, we are just obsessed with screens, and everything is based around screens. And I know my goal for this year, both my wife and I, our goal is just to spend some more time away from screens, just enjoying the things like we used to, like playing a board game, making a model. Like my wife wants to get into air-dried clay, which is an interesting thing. Look it up. But just stuff like that, using our hands, because society now dictates that we have to use screens. We are forced to use screens. So in those moments where we have a choice, maybe our first choice doesn't need to immediately be a screen. Maybe it can be something more practical with our hands, or just enjoying simply life away from a screen. There's my thoughts. So please do let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on screen time. Do you think it's a problem? Do you think it's an issue? And how can we resolve it? English doesn't just have to be learnt on a screen. We can also learn it and improve our English away from screens. Okay, so always keep that in mind. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all very soon. Have a good one, guys.